What's good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla stock and some very important technical updates. I want to break down what's happening to the overall market, what the news is saying about it, what the news is saying about Tesla, and what's going on with SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, Apple, and many other tickers. But before I break anything down about all of this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends in just 7 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with Tesla and the market. Looking at Tesla, we had a pretty decent day today, in my opinion. There was some bad news that started us off with initial jobless claims being a little bit low, incentivizing the Fed to be hawkish, and also this new news involving Apple banning basically their governmental employees from using iPhones. So this is some very, very big news, and this caused Apple to sell off and some other stocks to just gap down. And it's had a big effect on the entire market, especially Apple, which played a big role in dictating that. So Apple caused, alongside this big news and all the other factors, they all caused Tesla to gap down like this. And I was warning you all, if Tesla ended up breaking, right? My warning for everyone was if we broke 242, that would have been a really bad sign. So we had to watch and see if Tesla could hold it. We managed to hold it quite nicely. Then as Tesla continued to push, I called out that Tesla should be bouncing very soon. We got this very nice bounce. Tesla started pushing all the way up. It actually turned green temporarily before closing just barely in the red, only down 0.17%. So very, very flat day overall when it comes to the close. We were basically pumping for most of the day since we basically gapped down. But at this point, there's a very, very good chance Tesla's going to make an attempt to try to push higher. Looking at the current trend, so long as there's no bad news. And I want to give you guys like more details about why that is once I talk about like SPY and other factors. But first, let's talk about the market and some other things before I talk about the charts. Just as a reminder, we have the wholesale inventories data coming out 30 minutes after the market ends up opening tomorrow. This could cause some volatility, but I don't think it's going to be that crazy. And besides that, there's nothing else coming out for the data side. Some news has come out that Tesla secured a deal to deploy 20,000 universal wall chargers at Hilton hotels. That is good news for them as they're going to be getting more and more exposure. And this is going to incentivize not only more Tesla individuals to go to these Hiltons, but this is also going to help Tesla make more money in the process. So very, very good news for them. Very proud of Tesla, and I think that this is just getting better and better for them. They're going to be putting level 2 chargers there, known as the Tesla wall connectors, and that is good for them. It's going to be all over the world, apparently, especially in many, many places in North America. This includes other countries such as like Canada and Mexico and the USA, but it's great, great, great news for them. And this deal is going to be starting the beginning of early 2024. So with these connectors and more of these deals being made, it is great for Tesla's overall growth, and it's just going to continue to get better for them. I also want to add that when it comes to their new NACS charger, they're going to become more better as time goes on. I can't wait to see what else the future holds for them, as this could be, causing like another business practice for Tesla, where different hotels out there, right? We could have Holiday Inns, we could have other ones, could be making deals as well, or at least have lots of interest, because this is going to be driving in more and more individuals out there. And if more vehicles, right? If you have a different type of car other than a Tesla that is compatible with the adapter, that's also going to be great for them to incentivize more people to come to the hotels while making Tesla more and more profits. So very, very awesome news in my opinion. I'm very, very excited about this. There's also this big news that came out that Tesla added a blind spot indicator to the Model 3 Highland. This is something that was much needed in my opinion, as many individuals and other car review experts were talking about this. And this is just a great feature out there for safety and to really help other individuals out there to become more aware of what's like around them. So it's very awesome to see. This is going to be very helpful for drivers to see locations which are hard to see when changing lanes. And it's going to make things a little bit easier for them with these new features. So very awesome. You can see it right over here. This could also be used in addition to like using your side mirrors and also your extra mirrors for more and more safety and features like that. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening to the market. Let's talk about SPY real quick. This is very important for all Tesla investors too. I want to mention that tomorrow we have about 94,000 calls in the money as of right now for SPY, and about 355,000 out of the money, 138,000 in the money puts, with 900,000 out of the money. So it's clear there are way more puts than calls expiring with the 2.32 put to call ratio, but max pain is at 445. So this is telling us that if I was a market maker, if I was dictating this market, here's what I would do. I would basically try to pump the market a little bit, try to get us to close above 445, and there's a very, very good chance of a green close for SPY for tomorrow and most stocks out there. This is what the market makers are incentivized to do with all the puts expiring. The same thing is being confirmed right over here because when you look at the calls that are just going to be for tomorrow, when it comes to expirations, we have a big increase in the open interest for the 446 strike. That's one of the biggest open interest increases. Also, the 449 strike. So, this could be like a very, very quick scalp. They could be entering them just to exit them like tomorrow morning or very, very early on because they were very cheap in the morning today when you saw how SPY gapped down. So, this could all be part of their strategy to pump the markets even more. And we're seeing lots of increases in the open interest for these strikes. On the put side, we're seeing big decreases in the open interest, especially at 445. Massive, massive dumping going on right over there. Now, the overall volume is a little bit high there, but it's also particularly high at 445 as well. So that's going to be a very important trigger for the market makers. They may try to close this very close to this, if not a little bit higher, in my opinion. I think there's a good chance of that potentially happening. So this is all kind of like telling us the same thing. Now, when it comes to Tesla, however, what's good about Tesla is we have 115 million in volume. So Tesla was pumping for most of the day. We did gap down because of some bad news involving China, but for most of the day, Tesla ended up pumping and we're getting some good volume, which is a good sign of strength for Tesla. Tesla is higher than before, I would say relative strength. Our price pairs relative to price or short volume is like kind of like dropping a little bit, but the price pairs ratio, which is actually right here, is still looking quite good as Tesla has that strength. Looking at the price comparison of Tesla compared to the market, Tesla is still showing strength over there too. Now, other analysts like Guggenheim are saying to sell your Tesla shares. There was truth behind that claim because Tesla did drop just a little bit. If you want to just talk about like what they could have been projecting, however, I would say that is more of a better buying opportunity, and there could be more buying opportunities coming if there are any more moves to the downside. Because I see a big pump coming to Tesla as the months progress, with the Cybertruck coming out and more exposure to bullish catalysts. I'm very excited about that. I think the future is still bright, and there still is potential upside later on for the year. Don't forget that Novembers tend to be the best months of the year for Tesla, or one of the best months, and we're getting very, very close to that time frame. September's tend to be relatively weak for them, and this is no surprise as to how the market is cooling off, not just for Tesla, but for the whole market in general. And from a historical basis, we tend to be green about 49% of the time on Fridays, and we tend to see more volatility around 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern time and also around 2 o'clock p.m. for Tesla. Looking at the shorting, we saw a little bit more shorting going on Tesla over the last couple of days, with 41 million Tesla shares being shorted. Just a little bit more, but it's completely fine. Tesla ended up dropping shortly after that as well, so I do believe shorting played somewhat of a role. Anyways, now I just want to transition into what's going on with Tesla and the overall market. Anyways, looking at Tesla, we had a pretty nice day, in my opinion. We gapped down and saw a very, very nice pump. We have this bullish divergence that has developed, but one thing I can't really predict is what the news will tell us tomorrow morning, because you never know what news could come out. That's why you have to be prepared for anything just to be safe. But looking at the current technicals and looking at what's very probable on the options chain and etc. It looks to me like Tesla's in this range overall. We've been stuck in this massive range, and I think that Tesla has potential for upside again. We basically kind of like dropped or gapped down off bad news, then pumped, dropped or gapped down, then pumped. 2 days in a row, almost 3 days in a row, basically. And I think that there's a good chance Tesla's going to try to establish a higher low. It might gap down tomorrow into the very high 240s, like 247.5. Push after that. As soon as we open, it should push up and start trying to break out to 255. Could go a little bit higher. There's a real possibility of that before it rejects and starts cooling off just a little bit, but still closing in the green. I think there's a high probability of that based off the current technicals. I think Tesla, once again, could kind of like gap down, push up intraday, cool off a little bit, but still close green. And I think the market's going to follow this trend. Now, one thing that could help the market even more is going to be Apple stock, because when you look at Apple, we have this unfilled gap that has formed overnight. And this is very, very important for Apple and its investors, because Apple right here is going to dictate how the market moves. If Apple breaks and holds 178.5 and manages to hold that, there's a chance it may try to make an attempt to fill the gap, as we're getting very close to Apple's big event. If Apple does fill the gap, it's going to pump SPY in the QQQ. Or at the very least, we could see it just make an attempt to test like 180, which is where our 50 EMA happens to be, I believe. I think it's right here on the 30 minutes time frame. We also have this inverse head and shoulders and a bullish divergence right here developing on Apple. So I think the odds favor it making its way up to 180 at the very least. But then there could be a rejection either there, or it pushes up to fill the gap at like 181 and then it rejects. Then it starts to cool off a little bit, but it still closes in the green. That's where I'm leaning towards on Aapl. For SPY, let's just go back to SPY before I talk about the QQQ. We also have a potential inverse head and shoulders. We have a nice bullish structure developing on it. Are we going to see SPY kind of like push up in the pre-market and come down, maybe gap down one more time before it starts pushing up higher? There's a real possibility of that, but we have this potential inverse head and shoulders, and we have a very, very good chance it's going to try to make its way up to these imbalance fills. I could see it at the very least trying to get up to like 446, maybe a little bit higher. 447 is possible before it rejects, comes back down and closes just above 445. That's kind of like what I'm predicting. So it might like gap down tomorrow, push up, then during the market open, get very close to 447, reject off that, cool off, and still close above 445 for a green close. That's what I'm predicting for SPY. And I think that's very probable. I think that the QQQ is going to follow the same trend. We could see the triple Q try to push up for like the 374 to 375 area, which is where we have this gap. Then we might see the QQQ reject very close to 375, cool off a little bit, and still close green. I'm predicting that for the QQQ as well. I think there's a good chance of that happening. Nvidia has the gap all the way up to about this 470 area up here. We might see Nvidia gap down a little bit. The overall trend is still not necessarily proving that there's like a big change in market structure just yet, but we did manage to bounce off the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame, which tells me that Nvidia has some good support. Nvidia might be forming an inverse head and shoulders, and it might end up opening kind of flats, maybe a little bit red, kind of like gapping down just a little bit, then start pushing as we open tomorrow to fill the gap at 470. I think there's a high probability of that happening. Then we might see Nvidia reject and start cooling off as time goes on and close around the mid 460s for a green close. I think there's a very, very good chance of that potentially happening. Could even close a little bit higher, but I do believe it's going to try to make an attempt for 470 at the very least. I think Nvidia is going to get a green close just like Tesla, SPY, Apple, and the QQQ for tomorrow, in my honest opinion. For AMD, I could see 107 being tested with the bullish divergence, but it's not looking that strong, so it might reject off that and still close very flat. Netflix, same thing. I think Netflix is just very flat, very stationary. Could retest this resistance at 446, maybe go a little bit higher. I mean, 450 is on the table. I'm not really counting on that as we have this bullish divergence. So maybe it tries to get close to 450, if not 446, then rejects and closes flat. I still find that very probable. On the NASDAQ, this is looking a little bit more bullish. You could see we're trying to fill this gap. We might finish filling this gap and pump a little bit more thanks to Apple. There's a high probability of that happening on the NASDAQ. Same thing on SPX. There's an unfilled gap which we can make an attempt to fill. If you look at the VIX, this is looking a little bit more bearish. This thing could kind of like push up a little bit, maybe get a retest of like 14.68, reject off that, then start cooling off to fill this gap all the way back down into the 13s. This could be because of the market potentially pushing. The dollar has a bearish divergence that has developed, and it's starting to cool off just a little bit, but it's not really budging quite yet. It's kind of flat since the rejection. So we're going to see if the dollar ends up breaking below 105. If that's the case and this bearish divergence plays out and it starts cooling off, it could be because of the market bouncing very soon. The market could bounce as we approach Apple's big event on September 12th, but don't forget after the events we tend to see sell-offs. I will talk more about the sell-off later on, but for now we could see Apple in the market push approaching Monday close, if not even like the early morning of Tuesday. So there could be more upside coming. For Coinbase, like I said before, this thing's a little bit overbought. We hit overbought territory on the smaller time frames. We might see it gap down, retest like 80, if not 78, bounce off that, then trade kind of sideways. I still think it could try to like push it up, but we might get a somewhat red close. For Google, it looks bullish. Going to be watching this imbalance. I think it's going to head for 137, reject off that, and then trade a little bit sideways, but still close kind of flat or a little bit in the green. For Amazon, we have potential to push all the way up to about 138. Sorry about that, guys. 138. We could reject off that, maybe go a little bit higher. 139 is a possibility. Then end up closing a little bit in the green. We have a 4-hour bullish cross in the PPO. So watch this thing try to push up to about 138, reject a little bit, maybe go a little bit higher. The 139s are a real possibility, and then close somewhat in the green. Meta, on the other hand, is starting to curl just a little bit. There is potential for it to push up higher. We might see it retest 301 or so. then reject off that and close a little bit in the green. But I'm still predicting a somewhat green day, but it may not be that crazy. So, anyways, guys, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. I hope my prediction on Tesla was kind of clear. Could gap down tomorrow just a little bit, get a really nice push up as the day opens, getting to the mid 250s, could go a little bit higher, then reject off that, and then close a little bit in the green. I am predicting a green close and a bounce for Tesla. And I think that's what I'm seeing for tomorrow based off the current trend. Now, news could come out, which I can't predict, so I can't always make promises about what the market's going to do because nobody could promise anything about the future. But what I can tell you is that it's very likely that what I said is the most likely possibility, and it's going to play out in my opinion. And we will see what happens tomorrow morning, but that's what I think will happen. And I just want the best for everyone. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you and peace out.